Mate, for in the team, there's not one idle thought that anyone could program. Hi, g'day, and we're on the scene today. They say that at the very start of life, before there was even the first developments of life itself, there had to be some sort of scenery. Not just that, but before the Big Bang could implode, we have to ask ourselves, was there actually a precise location or an altitude or velocity? If in the beginning there wasn't already a location for things to start sprouting, then where did the location come from? And if there wasn't a location, then is life even locatable? And yet, have we not found that there is no location for things seen to be gathering up in an ordinary state, without themselves being prepared as ordinary? Now, we could find one thing to be similar. The way we disgrace ourselves every day, we make out like there's a scene, and also a back scene, and also a drop that we can cater to find within ourselves that at the start of life, if there was no such scene, and no such artifact or date of life, there would be no apparent need to find out altering course. When you perfectly set in the image, you make out like it's not perfect to take. You zoom in on me, mate. You try to think about what it'd be when you look out at the sea. Aren't you just alluring yourself of me? I stand up there quietly, shivering always in the frost, because it's not there that you could think. It's not even spiritual if you try to relate. Now that you look at this, you'd think about it. What if one day season was over before the quickest one came? Now I'm looking at this day, and I couldn't say, without my money in my backpack and the bricks that I've laid, I'd only find out there's no waste till the day that the truth couldn't be made. Now I know this ain't just the truth, because I've searched all of you, and I've found inside an elephant that my mitre might run side. Now I think it might be seen by eye that the side of my light is only one that I could take until the day I can track. Now I fetch about this day, and I make it out just to save, 'cause I make it back to that day where there was no one to make a mistake. Now I find out these days, they're not just where I swam, they're only the place that I bid for myself to come down in like a slithering little snake. Now you could say it's not the sun, but I'm still not sure of my own sun. And I've said to myself, could I be true if I've only found out it's real for you? Now look at this and tell me it's true, otherwise you'll tell me it's not about you. Now I think about all of this, and you tell me I've touched the base, but when I look at all these, then I find out it's just another brick made. So if we look right back to the very beginning of life, when the child is being birthed in the womb, then was there a location? It seems the sperm left its spot to go to where the egg was already taken in its tame. So the egg in its womb and the sperm left its spot. The sperm made mates at the womb where the egg was bound. Now therefore the egg once would lay itself and remove itself from where it was woven, and become then immediately the child birthed into the sight, where they seem to be spotted at the doctors, or in the childbirth and delivery rooms. And then there's a location that child could arrive. But already, if we look right back into it, then would you suggest to me that the very first single cell organism that sprouted up in a hot spell developed into a worm, like a see-through worm or a bloodworm or one of those colourful mozzies that fly around? Would you suggest that to me? I think, mate, that the very first one, it grew up like a bloody seed. Like a seed? Yes, mate, that's what I believe. Do you believe the first single cell organism was the seed? Yes, mate. And that seed grew into a worm? No, it grew into a tree that started to grow. Yep, but the ends came out as worms? Yep. Then those worms dropped down and harvested the soil. Yep. And then laid some eggs, which turned into seeds, because they came from a seed. And then it grew more plants until the plant was strong enough to beat. Yep, mate. But first there had to be a scene. Yep, mate. I'm with you on this, mate. There had to be a location, you're saying, in the start. If there is actually a start. But don't get me wrong. Hi, I'm Hobby Hops, and I'll be on the trots, because it's the truth, You tell me it's not just force, no. When you make out like it's dinner dates, and do especially spoil my mates. Now look at this and tell me it's not true. Have you done all of this just for chew? Now I make out like it's not mean, but I'm telling you, you got to show me. Is it just because you can't be taken out? Or is it only because you can't be made to speak? Now I think about what it means. You're trying to tell me the truth is that there's only this today. And this today only comes in that one sound. And that sound can't be bothered by anyone in the mound. Now I think about what it means, because I've never seasoned this today. But still I think about what it is. And no one can tell me especially to relate. Because if there's no precise accuracy of any spoiled attention, when someone's focusing and you can't test the measure of their grip on the focus, but you come in and spoil their attention, yep, but then they carry on. That location between somewhere pointed to itself to say that when it's not measured and they come back to their focus, then were they even distant to what their attention was spotted on when the time came to? So it could suggest in reality that there's a precise difference between where we're attuned to be and where we take off to. Until we see ourselves apart from ourselves, then we can only find in some reasonable level that it's like those daydreamers, Yep, Jet, you're perfect for this one. Just like that sort of thing, Yep, that's right, Jet, you got that fine, Jet. Those daydreamers. And whenever someone spots them, so I'm just working away over here. Are you daydreaming, Jet? Oh, yes, Daddy. But Jet could have been gone for just a second. When he was daydreaming. Could have been 72,000 billion years. That difference between the precise measurement of where we handle ourselves to be vertically explained, attention on reality, So there's Jet standing, which is his attention on reality, and then he's prepared to dream. So as he enters into that dream state, then he could be gone for years. But when someone snaps his attention, then he goes, "Oh yes, Daddy," because the body is focused to be attuned to the reality dimension and depth of alertness. But even so, it's science. Yeah, they said there was a singularity out there with the Big Bang Theory. Oh, yeah. That wouldn't be the sun, would it, that singularity? Well, they say we evolved from fish and mammals and whales and all that, and walked into things out there, from a hot spring, the first single cell organism came, which must have grown into some sort of fish. Yeah. But really, I think that's what we're heading to. We're heading to the deep end. We're heading to be undersea. We're going down under. Yeah. They say the galaxies are expanding, which means they're getting away from each other. So it says there might be a precise location, but that's where we're spotting it. I can see from here, everywhere that I look at all galaxies, that they're all moving away from each other and moving away from us. That says they must be the origin. And there's a bloody busted seal in the microwave. And science compels with the data that up there's freezing. So how does the sun still have warmth by the time it travels 7 years to the world? And how does the ozone get hotter? How is the globe warming when space is minus 4,000 degrees or something, minus 400 degrees? And so that single cell organism. Just think about, was a baby first delivered from a single cell organism that evolved into species of humankind? Or did a mother come first to birth that baby? Either way, the womb had to already be. So the singularity, the hot dense state of mass, a proton, electron, and a neutron, and it started to expand and then bang. Wouldn't they look at it more like something intruded into the area, laid billions of seeds, and one egg caught one of the seeds and grew the womb and the procedure room of where the rest of the seeds and the rest of the eggs would hatch together and grow lots and many things to randomise it in any other way of what science can't really produce, which is clear audient of what it actually means to relate. But if we actually look at it, then where was that singularity if the Big Bang Theory is accurate? Was there a location for it? Or was that just scientists drunk one night? And goes, yeah, it was the Big Bang. I heard the bed bust when Dunny was in there with Louis. Yeah. They ended up adopting a child, I believe. Named it Science. Some sort of degree, science degree, I think it was. Science degree Addleton. But even so, if there wasn't actually a location, then how could it begin? And if it hasn't begun, then would it still be beginning? Or do you think nothing happened nothing can happen, and nothing was made to happen without it not happening. And as we can look at it to have happened, now as we can look at it to have happening, then as it's happening, we have seen it to be just here where we are present today. So if today was forever standing and it became under attention, then if we could focus right on today, would we leave behind that maze of what yesterday had found us to claim in the moment that we couldn't see forward of today because it was already made as completed? If it was already made as completed, then that was the elevation that led us to today. We're finding so much room to temple and trample and zoom. But is that just saying that as we look further into the diameter, so from the world, further into the diameter, and I get closer, and it becomes right to my eye that I'm now just zooming in on this one spot. But when I was back here, I was seeing this whole thing. Now I'm seeing just one little spot on there. And then I have to attach my radio antenna and zoom in on that one spot to see little spots that then I can zoom in on. So I zoom in on that one spot and then I change my radio antenna and I zoom in now to this little spot within that one big spot. And then I zoom into that to see like a land base on another planet. So how can you zoom into something tiny and then find it and see behind that tiny thing is more tiny things that you can zoom in on even more and zoom right down to the land base? It's like taking my eye out of its socket, winding it in, and then letting it go on a spring. And it just goes and becomes there. And I look at it with the other eye, and it's tiny. Until I bring my eye to it, it seems to match. But as you can't see it, there's no today to make without it not being. Because yesterday was never found, tomorrow can't be seized, and today hasn't been made or ever recorded as a pattern. But still the season is taken away from us because some people think that we can't make it. Unless it wasn't to be made, then we never have to save it. Now if we look at it like it's always been, this place forever has been. No evolution in science because all the continents were already revealed. The water wouldn't have to run back to reveal the continents. People would be here forever. People would have been here the same time as animals would have been. We would have been here when the first trees were growing still. But those trees would have already been growing. I call that place my today because we'd always be here if it was always open to being. But we know that we haven't always been here. But if we have always been here, since the very beginning, and that's the history that's recorded as secret, then what do they make it my today? Because it might be that simple to trample on the evidence before you can say, all right. Otherwise, I look at the image as fraudulent. Because if it's never going to be created and has never been made, then it has always been. And since the very earliest days, then human beings would have walked out this way. and came in this way and met with people that were walking up this way and collided. Because if they were always here, so here they always were, and it has always been. They went to war with each other and kept secret history and knowledge to themselves. That, yeah, we can tunnel out anywhere and do anything we want to do here. Because this place has always been, it's a magical place. The answer is actually magic. You know, where did it come from? It's magic. You know, how was it created? Magic. And when you see that answer is always fitting, then when we first developed that as the answer, and people went, oh shit, so it's magic and I am it and it is us because I've always been here. You know, my ancestors were always here. The very first one that was always here, and then you might be here forever. You might live forever. Yeah. Yeah. But they keep that history to themselves. I believe that might be the secret out there. Because my today has to have always existed. If it was never made as an image or made as a recipe, as a recipient of itself to be dated. Well, that's very obviously stated, mate. But it can't be evidence to be recycling without itself as a reciprocal. It can't be evidence to be a reciprocal of itself without data spreading. Yes, but as you can't find for yourself what it isn't to mean, then the evidence that one states to be clear is only finding in the image that one secret taken insider could have been walking in history for days before himself was being, and he could have walked out this way. And then just rolls around with the surface. And when he gets here, he just goes up again. Because the world is definitely moving one way, or at least the sky is. And all those that walk out this way, to then walk this way, and meet with the ones that go this way, because that's what they're led to believe. When they bump, after a child's born here at 1990, he's going this way. Another child's born at 1990 as well, but goes this way. And comes down here. They cross at 5 years old. And this one's already laid all future eggs to this one's life, because this one's going to be going this way. So this one's going this way, and this one's coming this way. So this one goes, yep, this child was birthed 1990, same year as me, he's one of my targets. So the day that he dies, I'm going to be right there pushing the pen into his ink pad. Boom. That marks every journey along that way to make that happen. And they cross over at 5 years old, and this one carries out the door and turns towards today. And then the one going this way sees him at 5 years old and bumps steer on the clear to counter the approach by knowing that indeed one went up and can only come around so far to come up again. So sort of traps us in this side here, and there is no returning to that mind today over there. Yeah. But still, the very first ones that went out that way, you know, the very earliest, I mean, they would have come right up here, built the pyramids, built Stonehenge, built everything that they knew of. Yeah. Yeah. Probably made the internet, probably made all the tech and gadget. And we're leading to whatever they've got planned for our lives. But when great ones say that no saying can be said as same, or no one can say the same thing, no one can say the same as what yesterday would present, without yesterday not being seen. Now I could look at today and find out that today doesn't mean much. But when I look at yesterday, I can say, well done, lads. That meant heaps to me and meant heaps to us. Now I could look forward of this day and say, yeah, tomorrow, I know it's not going to be quite as good, but still my cheers are going to carry through, because my looks will be even evener. As the day that I found here today, where this took place, and yeah, cheers, lads. It was a great day. Then tomorrow, where I walk, I'll be found to be present, and that means forevermore. I'll carry that joy with me, and that lingering chaos won't be around so much, because it's not seated for either date if there's actually no location. If there's actually no location, then that means you can travel off the timeline as well. So we thought we'd at least open up to you all and say that, yeah, it's pretty much dated, and it's only going to go the way that we perceive it to be taking itself, until we think that it's not made. Until we think that it's not made. Then what do we make? If we only make that it's not made, then is it that we don't make it when we're not making it as made? If we make it as made, then it's forever open to being imaged. And as it's always being imaged, then you only ever find the same repeated image or same repeated sequence of what once was mastered, to be imaged, filmed and elaborated on, in season when there's doubts and in season when there's change, to reset the image into focus and to make it once again witnessed, so that it goes on to being always. As for it continuing in life, then when you're on the other side of the date calendar or the date line, well, you can pretty much hysterically stare at any witnessing action that takes place from the novelist's film. As for data sequences and chartings of all reports, then we in the religious housing make for the obvious stated reasons. They will always refocus our agenda on prioritizing the same image to be kept and stored in history, so that life maintains itself as here and as seen, as critically witnessed and as critically observed, within what we share of ourselves to be enjoying it always. Without ourselves not seeing forth of it, then we can't make the action that no one's made. For not this day could be enjoyed if no one's ever seen themselves to be enlaced. But when we're not in there to be seasoned, then we can't take ourselves as seen, because it's not the real focusing that we once made. It's only the witnessing of what we can't change, and that is the fact that something had to be stored. And if it wasn't stored, then we change everything every day to maintain something as important. Without ourselves being not real, then we can't find if anything actually is real, unless there's one thing proven to be dishonest. And if we find one thing not dishonest, then we'll only see that we've not been real. And if we haven't been real, then that suggests that one thing wasn't fake. Without ourselves being not kept from history, then seasoning ourselves or seating ourselves in place to witness the observations of space means that we can allure ourselves to be certainly dishonest and certainly kept from what the weather might maintain, which is when we store ourselves in witnessing actions, then we can season ourselves to be storing all actions as decently placed within the observations of our call. And as we take ourselves an image, then we find within the image of ourselves that the data must be enjoyed and always rejoiced in, until we find out ourselves can't be monitored to witness ourselves as critical. And when we don't find in ourselves that the image has been maintained, then we fall to the cease level and we broke down. You know, the same with anyone. No, Gary, you didn't judge that right on that day. And Gary stands right. Don't you... No, Gary. John's right, you know. That wasn't the way to go about that, Gary. Don't you get in on this, bloody Lou. No, Barry comes straight in and gets on Gary's back. And then Gary goes up, right down, you know. Can't maintain his judging level anymore. You know, deceases, retires from judging. You know, he lets it out into the world in the energy field. You know, bloody tribunals go on, review panels, and he gets rejected of being a judge anymore. Yeah, he's on a beauty contest. You know, yep, judging himself in the mirror. But yeah, but still at the same time, it's like that when it's broken down. So is it the same for you when the weather makes it more than true? You know it's just the fruits that make you rejoice. When it's joy to carry her, then I know it's just the truth. It's the work you do before the Zoom. It's the job you take on at half noon. When you look out at the season, we'll say still it must be beaten, 'cause it's never true if you're looking at you. Now I think about all that it means, and this day I could be kept, but I'm storing it up because my best bet ain't setting it in on yet. Now today couldn't be made, 'cause I found my season. It's just one weather to take, and one mate's place to make. Now I think about this, and I look at it always true. It's only the dwelling that you zoom when you assume there's only one way to take your zoo. Now I look at this, and I cherish every bit of my diffs, because it might be still Satan's, but at the end of the shift, you'll say, won't we lorry to another worry, because the marry might still see that we haven't found it separated from our scene. Now the truth hasn't been yours, and the truth hasn't been his. It might only be the truth that one man proceeded to say when he came out and took off his chains. Now it might be the truth until this day. Wouldn't you say it's not for me to leave unless it's up late? Now I look at this, wouldn't you say it's only this truth that you tell me it's not late? Because on that day you judged us insane. But then we looked back at all that was made, and I thought about it. And then I remembered it's only 1/2 day late, 'cause he came in at noon. So saying this bloke died and rised. Created the XV axis. They're just going left and right. Now when I'm about to climb that mountain, up I go. And how did he do that? Swam out to the edge, blindfolded, and surfed out from himself. But how would he know it's rounded? if he took that blindfold off at the Cape. And when he met with his wife, she wasn't naked, but he said she still wasn't blinded. Now she went on a boat right next to him as he swam over. She said, I could see you going straight, even though you struggled up and down the surf. And he said, that's only because I laid down in the river. Then he made out of his sea what she made within he, to meet at the same sure time, where one would find within themselves that he only married her because she matched with his undies, and his undies weren't cloth, they were made of stick. And when the stick were broke, it left himself open. And she said, would it be rounded today? And he said, no, it wasn't my stroke, it was just where I stuck. And even though I went up and down the surf, I never left home. So here we are at this shore, but that boat just followed me as I swam, and I was blindfolded. So there you were on top of the boat, upside down over me, surfing me back to the same coast because there was nowhere else to go. And so would it be round if we can't travel forth of it unless we're not around it? I believe it's set in the mind. The location is seen by the sight. When the sight is imaged on the light, then the light reveals within its own time the time that one takes for itself to see it. As we look at the sea, then the sea floats. Without the sea being bred, then it wouldn't make out of its doves what the tails won't tow. And as the touching of anything means that this here I've tasted, and as I touch on this, then I can't say what the taste might be unless my lips haven't been bent. Now I take not the lip to be like lipe, but the lip might be liped if I haven't lipped my lip. And then I might see that the sea only floats because it's not open. But if that man swam straight with his stroke, blindfolded, and ended up there with his wife, and she got taken on a boat and he chased after it. He swam all the way to the edge and died. And married her in the afterlife. Then he'd come back at noon, rise, and go this way. And he'd rise. I guess that's where he said good night, because this is the science and technology category video. But still, it's not hard to surprise the world that, yeah, I spent an hour with that bloke, still returning every now and then. It's hard. Told me when I was 6 years old, you're my son. You know, every now and then he pops in. And I think about all those ones that know the secret of history. They go this way and come in this way as we're all going up this way, and they settle our lives in order. But he came to me at 6 years old, you're my son. And now he's going around here. And as he's going around here, then he's observing all that they've done. Yep. Then he comes in and counters it to leave me level in my fixing. It's not made to allure the seed. It is no perfect image for someone to see. Without the ocean being taped then there'd be no way to flate what one hasn't flated. But still, we look at the image like it can't be maintained. But why has it not been opened for thousands of centuries? We could take an image of time, which is a capturing of the mind. When the mind is distilled and one is focused. Oh. Yes, Danny, when one is focused, we can take an image of the mind and see it set apart from the image that we allow ourselves to see. Like when you go, oh, and your dog goes, oh. That image we can capture in the mind of what the dog is producing. You go, oh, and the dog reads you in confusion and goes, he's trying to trick me. But the dog goes, oh, and plays a bit of a game to see how you react. Yeah, the dog is thinking, oh, and then it's waiting to see what you're going to say because there's no actual reading there. Well, there's no actual read to take. Then the dog goes, oh, and the owner might go for a walk, eh, mate? Oh, oh, oh. But if there's no precise accuracy to measure the difference between one's own model and the theory of fascination, then we can't make a script be behaved without ourselves teaching, or we can't always make. So imagine those first ones, once they figured out that there's a date line. They went out this way, came up here, and in the 90 years of their life, like those ones that born in 1990 do the same, came down this way and said, yep, laid the first block. And then they came right the way down and got to that child birth at the same time as them and led him to laying the first block. And at the end of the 90 years, the pyramids were built. And as they met with them at like 5 years old, they came down, laid the last block that this bloke would lay on top of the pyramids. Came down at 5 years old, set him to lay the first block. And they went out, and the pyramids were already built. And they stayed on the other side. When there certainly isn't any precise accuracy of any model of theory of thought or theory of fascination, then we can idle the substance to make it an illurid state. But as we precisely calculate that the image can't always be represented or recalculated or reequated, then we can say that one thing is for sure: if there was never actually a location, then we could make out of the anti-location the location that one could say, and became that instant model of theory and fascination. Without looking at it precisely, the preceding daters might say that we failed here today with our floating characters, but we haven't looked at anything until the day we precede ourselves. Then we've only found the opening. And as we look at everything, then we only can find in one thing that no such data has ever been spread. But without ourselves not being there, then what would we say for something not being always? What would we say about something not always being here, without something not always being present? It just came to me today. Where did it float in from? Oh, I picked this up the other week. Where was it between those hours? Oh, I looked over that mountain and yeah, there it was. The guest's house. The guest's house. But was it there before? I had no words to say at the time. So where'd the words fly from? As we could say for ourselves, the time that is unnoted to proceed with any action isn't the best time to make up the substance of an action without there being no need for an action. If you don't have words at the time, then you're allowed to be shy. And later on the words will come. And that's when you need to speak. At the first time when there's no words to say, it's not the right time to be suggesting yourself to be acting or to be actioning on something you can't speak. So when you come to talk later, then you say for yourself that we can't mean to state that firstly we were calculated to be judging ourselves, but then found to be influenced within the major scene of what one scene would find within ourselves, to be floating out of the seat, as we take for not ourselves, and we find not within ourselves. Then we can't always present forward of what our actions might speak, without our actions not meaning that we dwell where we have not been, until we can't find in ourselves that no such thing as being has ever outdated the system to calculate within their witnessing acts what we find as influential by the place that we made. Now those ones who live on the other side these days, they could be doing all that tech work and leading the good heads out, as we could suggest with one thing. This isn't so much science and technology. It's the best martial arts combat technology there is to take evidence on. Because if there's no location, then we can set the image in frame and precisely stencil it as okay. We can't make up the image, lest we find for ourselves that there's no seeded seasons for anyone to take. I look at this image, I look at this worm, I find out there's no day to awaken, I find out there's no place to stay. Now I look up to my seat, and I think about my meat, but till I've been out here, just dwelling in my feet, then I'll find out my season ain't for anyone's old takings. But until I've been open, then I wouldn't say I'm a jolly little critter. You know, I'll come in with my weeder, and I'll wait down to the very wets, 'cause it's never wetting, unless you say it's not fought. Then wouldn't you say it's foring, when you think about itself as before it? Then wouldn't you make out like it's not seasoned? Now I suggest myself couldn't be capable until the days that we made up in faith, 'cause I believe it's still open, mate. But wouldn't you say that there's no judges artificially on their way, 'cause brothers still sigh at the day they rejoice from behind, looking at the season, looking at the setting, Looking at the picture, looking at the mates, naked in strips and naked in the fence, made up to believe but such a thing as messed. Now I haven't seen what it is, 'cause I'm looking at the nakedest best, and it's still the way to take until the day that you make, 'cause I haven't thought of every door, but that's when I remembered there's just a sport. Now I look at myself and I'm saying this ain't just hell, it's the nail and strip that you made out of my wet. What was it to be weathered? Now I can't be clever unless I'm not local, 'cause I made up of my own say the sight that I just believed. Now I look at this and I say, holy shit, is that jumping the fence or going beyond the streams? Because yeah, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. I think I'll take all the rebel outfits out there, or the criminals. The other bastards are all racist. You know, oh, I wouldn't do that. What do you do that for? You don't do that, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't go steal some clothes off the washing line. You can't do that. No, you can't go down there and rob from the stores, from the supermarkets. You can't do that. What do you mean? I need food, mate. You know, the water bill's too high, so I can't grow at home. Better than stealing off the neighbour, isn't it? He's a poor bloke like me. No, you can't go down to Servo and not pay for your fuel and do fuel runs. What do you mean? I need petrol for my car. They should never make cars if we don't need petrol for it. But look back in my today. There was no price on anything. You know, if a tribe found gold, they built the whole castle in gold. Then you say, okay, yep, you're the one that's seen it first, brother. Yep, you just build your mountain there in gold. That's where you stay, bros. And we just look the other way, sort of thing. Oh, bloody, that's nice. Let's build the whole place, yeah. You know how much clay there is out there. And we're doing steel frames and wooden houses. That's the jobs that science who make up the Big Bang Theory need to actually be working and focused on. You know, why are they chopping down trees to make timber houses still? When there's so much clay that bricks are turned over like that in a day. Yep. Now we're going to metal. It's crazy what we spend our time on to rejoice in, but still we can't favour it. Now, in the good question of was there a location? Well, something that's always been witnessed has to be locatable. Where's it actually stored? Well, it's hard to acknowledge when all such things are interconnected. You know, I witnessed this action taking place. My mate jumps over the creek and says he missed what happened. Then one that was doing the action that I observed and witnessed says, nah, it wasn't happening. You know, then the one that jumped over the creek comes back around and says, what wasn't happening? And I said, don't worry, it mustn't have happened. And then all that really happened was one that jumped over the creek came back and said, what really happened? So was there actually a location for it to be stored in? Well, as it was always witnessed to be happening, or witnessed to have happened, then it can't just have happened without it being not happening. Now, as it wasn't happening, then all that hadn't happened was that it hadn't been made to be seen, but always had it been seen, to be known as witnessed by the location. Now, the location itself can't ever be seized, can't ever be found, and can't ever be taken away, unless there's no place to make. But still, we can't find ourselves to be looking at any such thing without images not being made. And as I look at this, I look at many things. And I'll tell you every day of your life that if there wasn't a maid that made me, then I wouldn't be the mate that wasn't mated. And if my mate never made me, then being made I wouldn't have been. But when I had been made, then what was I mating? And if I wasn't mating with myself, then I hadn't been made by myself. And if I hadn't had a mate, then who would have not made me? And I didn't make myself. It took two to make one. Sometimes you get the twins. You know, it takes two to make two. Sometimes you get the triplets, two to make three. But when you look at the soul reoccurrence, then even when two is made of two, and two makes two as a whole one, born at the same date, born at the same time, born from the same sperm, or born from the same egg, born from the same sperm no matter what the egg splits in. Born from the same sperm, so two made one, that's two as one whole two. So it always has to be two, without itself not being seeded. And without the seeds not being made, then there's no way to find in any image what one's made for themselves to believe. Without lurking in any state, then we couldn't find our images to be made. And with no images not being made, then we only can take ourselves to be seeded. And no images can't be seen without ourselves not being made. And as we look at all images, then we could say one image can't be reduced. One image can't be reduced without the image being produced. When the image is maintained, then we can say that at a level, the image will always be focused on. And when the image is always focused on through time and history, then it keeps that place, as obviously stated, to be imaged and created. And we might not be the ones that live there, but still we go about our business to make sure it's open for anyone that might be travelling that way. And as we look for this such thing, then we look for ourselves to be seasoned before the day we can air ourselves. But at no special level of occurrence can we find within ourselves that no way has ever been made for no one to leave this place without this place not being seeded. And as we look to the image that no one's ever followed, then we can't find ourselves to be seen because, well, it's not like a day in a bucket. There's no rain and there's no taking. You find out it's just your favour when you're floating down into the zinc. Now you think about all that it rings when you're hard ringing dink and Dunkin' Doos. You take out the weight, but the weight's not wasted. You take out the mates, but the mate's not mated. You look back to the shining on the inner lining, and it says only is this zinculum. Now I think about where it might be, and I think about where I might be sheen. Then you take the lid, and what do you think? You come out of the bucket, but now you've got a ring. And I think about all that is made, and it might be seen to be beaded, but I can't just appear under the image unless I'm not naked. And that day I might find myself to be the alone traveller. And yep. It's been 46,225 years since it's been noon. Putting that last brick on the pyramid. And walking back down. And going up again. What, to keep them all on the other side? Not UFOs. Just the air. And then they cull everyone. And it gets buried. Yeah. They keep a few house rats. Chuck them back in this side. And then let them populate and do their own murder scene. Until I come back around and put the last brick on top. When they've taken all the fine specimen to the other side. Yeah, that might be the truth, but it's not much technology. It's not really science either. There's actually a bit of science behind that. That's smart. Another technology Avengers. Smart fluid. So instead of running cable, you just run pipe. You run the fluid through, it's a smart fluid. And at each point where the fluid joins, there's just a little switch that goes like that. So plugged in right into the core of the network at the boss's house. The boss sends an email around to the whole team, and from his end of his computer to where the smart fluid is, the little lever goes like this, boom. And when it flicks up, all the fluid tensions, and it runs a shock straight through it, like it goes, and then it hits the next ones at any join and stuff like that, and shoots off to all the individual computers, and they all get the message. But as soon as it flicks up, it flicks back down, so you can send another message straight away, and you'll get beep, 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 right behind each other. The thing with the smart fluid is fluids are smart. Fluids are smart. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed Was There a Location? Because I remember that if it wasn't always been, then we wouldn't have found a location yet. But if it hasn't been, then we could say we can make a location appear. But if there wasn't ever any evidence to state that it was open to being developed, then what left us in mentioning that just because someone figured out there's only my today. Then it might only go for 500 years. My today might, And we might just build into the technology. It's actually a simulator. Some sort of energy harvesting program for aliens. What I personally believe it is that flower of life. It made itself, and in making itself, it produced what was inside of it. The apple, or the man taking the apple off the tree. And when the man makes it, then the man's here making the flower, which is making creation. And it might only go for 500 years. And the image is the flower of life, with the man inside taking that apple, which is all the knowledge. And when he takes all the knowledge, it becomes opened and being made, and gets made for the distance that it's retrieved. Then within that time area, man exists here today, and from out of man's kind became the line that dates back right to the very instance of where the flower of life started to recede, and retained its image by placing this receptacle, which is one going out, to be the image of one coming in, which was where man was here taking the apple and made in the world to the knowledge, then man goes up and the apple back on the tree and the flower created, then that in there, when one went in, is where people formed from one coming in. So it's like a plug, then out of that plug, so all of a sudden people gathered here because one went in and everyone's going, whoa, what's happening there? So they came in through here. To the image of up here, there's the pyramids made. So pyramids made. They went, oh, whoa! But they came down out here. How are the pyramids made? How are the pyramids made? And set it in sign. Then the whole 500 years we're doing the tech job, because that's how the flowers stay with it to be created. We need technology there. If there's no technology in them, so it must be in the flower's design to make it immaculate or perfectly in sign. Yeah. But then we look at that whole occurrence. So somewhere about here, 485 years ago. Oh shit, granddad's granddad. So granddad's granddad was actually granddad's granddad. Because he's further along than me. So I was born here today. And I thought they came before me. But really they're this side of me. Because I'm going to be them one day. And that means my granddad's granddad is my granddad's granddad. And I'm his here today grandson. That was before he and will be after he, as the great-great-granddads would say for sure, that I am the son that birthed my granddad's granddad. And I'll be the son that becomes of my granddad's granddad. When I'm the son of my granddad's sons, father's sons, granddads, and becomes then seen that you can live forever within that misconception of the idol. So you can be your granddad's granddad's granddad. Yeah, who is further ahead than even your granddad's granddads. And also further behind than even your granddad's granddads. Because you become present today. Because you become present today. It's the same idol and misconception of what reality shows us. That some people do go that way. End these ones up in the stumps, Get these ones working for me. Yep, that's my last move. Wave them off at the funeral. Wear my jacket. They make the moves here. Yep. First move. Yep, weighing them and hit them down, make fun of them. When they say something stupid, make fun of them. I said when I was at Assumption in my primary school, all you got to do to get in with a girl is tell her she's beautiful. And my best mate Steve at the time said, Trav, that won't work. And they all laughed at me, So that was the first move to deplete me of my stability and alpha form. Thinking I'm knowing of everything and knowing how to do everything out there. Yeah. But when I die at my funeral, I knew how to die on time. Because what will make them live after me? The seating of the image is perfectly formed. And if I make myself in chaos, then will I praise the enjoyment of what I find in myself to be seated? Now if I look at this model, that one that was before the granddad's granddad, and will be after the granddad's granddad, could have been the one that came into work at noon. And when he hit that present mind, man lifted up in joy and hit the roof. and can only travel this way because he became older than his granddad's granddad and younger than his granddad's granddad. So he'd work this shift now. And when he finally takes off, then all that's older than him would go with him. And as he comes around, he'll see, oh, my granddad, so here he was born. Then he's got little nieces and nephews, little grandchildren. But as he becomes around, oh, that's my granddad who was older than me. He comes around now and says, oh shit, they're now granddad. So they would go with him as well. So he rises at work at noon. Then he'd bring all them with him. To lay that pyramid. To lay that in council of what you find in the image. That no one's ever seated. Without the seasoning not being made. And if it's not likened to be opened, then we couldn't hope for ourselves any best beats without the places not being made. So we like ourselves, but we couldn't say that we haven't seen anything. Because no image hasn't been made, unless there's no such thing to maintain. But still, we haven't seen ourselves. And when we look at ourselves, we can say, what am I looking at? What am I looking in? We can say, what am I looking in? If I look at myself, then am I looking in me to see myself? So from the outside, I can look into myself and find I'm seeing only myself. But when I see I'm myself, then I would be actually not looking into myself, but seeing that I'm the one looking at myself being looked at, from without myself being seen. Now, as I find myself to be imaged, I can maintain that image, but set that image to be recycled as recurrent by itself. Set that image to be recurrent by itself, and always see it in a position to make out of myself the false idol that no image can shape, without the maintenance of myself being placed. As I mark in my creation, then I could interpolly expect myself by saying, oh, I looked at myself in a different way today. And that's from me inspecting myself to say that I'm not the one seeing myself being seen by I myself, as I'm not the one looking into myself, as I'm seeing out from myself, me being seen by myself. But when I'm looking from inside of myself, then what do I see when I look outside to find I myself? And this whole image that you dress with could be changed. Think about it. When it has always been, then these have always been worn. But when you take these off and the brand sticks, then it's just like bang bang, you change your cloth like that. Because if it's always been, then shirts have been around forever. Look at a tree. It's had clothes on, woolly fur for ages. All the bark, mate. Yeah, mate. So shirts have been right around since forever. The fish are all inside the doona cover. Yep. Yes, Nita. Yes, Nita. Yes, Nita. Yes, mate. Now this is hard to assign, but you can't work out of any date. Because if you look at one date, that today this maid happened to be saved, then that date there, where we can record that that maid happened to be saved, then we can say, what is he going to be tomorrow if we record that day? If we say he was made that day, then the next day he can't be made. But if we say that man was made saved today, then tomorrow he can say it, that I am made today. Then the next day he can say it again, I am made today. If you wake up every morning and go, I am made today, then you're never actually in the doona. You're never actually on the bed. You were walking awake. So I wake up some mornings a bit groggy, and I'm already driving my car on the road before I've realised, oh shit, I should be awake by now. Because it becomes that automatic and cycle. But when I realise that every time I wake at noon, I come into a whole world of what they produced in recircling or recycling or reproducing, recurring, yep. But that they produced in recurring, like how they make their plan but come in this way, to what we made way back then and went out this way. Came in this way and set one inside to keep going around, to come up here, where we would see him taking the knowledge and us meeting with him. Yes, you're my son. And then as the world heard the knowledge, the flower was made and created and opened. Then he rose out of the world, because we just turned it like that for him. So we all went out that way, but he was seeing it on the side. So he went out that way and came around this way, as we went around there and came in here, and we crossed meet and go out until it was half noon once again. That's if it's actually made. That means first we had to find the location. If someone actually created the flower of life and made everyone inside of it, then first we had to find a location to make such a thing. We could have wasted the whole planet, kept a few people and different species. I say we because it's still a we job out here. It doesn't matter who it is. We did that today, bruss. We done that. We got to the moon. Yeah, but we said we didn't get to the moon too. We done that. We did that. We got there, but we didn't get there. We got there, but we haven't got there. We didn't get there, but we still got there. That means that there's still something going there. As long as something's still going, then my brain can tinker on. And as long as I'm tinkering on, then I'm going to be where I've made myself seen. But still, I'm not placed where I haven't been seen. Because one image can't be stored forever, unless no image has ever been made. But still, I ask myself, is it like that to be seen? Or is it just made to be imaged, without it being influentially created? For we take ourselves not in seen, but we have to say, where did they come from? And where did they find this location? Unless the location wasn't made out of some sort of fluid. Then they occurred into it as the same bodily temper of what you'd find within the fluid balance of light stained. So like the sun coming in at half noon, he rises from below. When he hits here, he sort of tumbles out and goes there. So he rises there and sort of tumbles out and goes there. Which you see there, the 90-degree elevation. Sorry, the 90-degree elevation. And then when he goes there, well, he's seen this here velometer. to be disproportionate and around there, where on this section it comes like that, and that's where he rises in. So it gives a blanket side of the back corner and a blanket side of this top corner that's sort of hollow, to be twisted and turned and taken. That's imaged into a sided fluid. That when the fluid is rebounded, it proceeds to image itself as a shape that's critically maintained by itself being influent. But so-called aka prison master or neck-nate warrior, god traveller or ET quester. And as we look for it, now that 90 degree right there is the image of light that comes through, from back there, you know, when you're trying to find it once again, comes through from back there, the very peak of where he rises, and then dives down to where he died and started to rise, by they saying that he died and went back in time, where the light seemed to come in and shine to the place that he was present, where today he was made as seen, to be of taking the apple. And as it was thought to be found, that no seed had seen had ever been made, or idled in temper, without themselves taking the feat. And themselves, well, I'm still not sure, you know, but it's not very good. It's not very guessed. It's not very good at all. Because that diameter of that angle there, that 90 degree angle, gives the light form to appear, where it comes down and around. And that's where the world wakes up. Good morning. But they're really looking at this way towards the sun, because that's now where they're travelling. But if they go out through the sun, then they come in down this way, which is where the sun will be when he's left the building, coming around this way, where he died and was never seen. But life to itself, we can never find it for reals, unless we haven't placed ourselves to be seated. But still, I haven't liked such a thing, without my image not being made. So as I look at all such things, then I could guess to myself that not all such things have been. And as we say to many things, that no such things have ever been, then we only can say that one thing hasn't been before it's not been. And if it's such a thing, then we can influence ourselves to be mated by what we defer to be imaged, as especially taken from what we think for ourselves to find. Now some could say, yeah, that's miraculous discovery. You know, I can just go dun 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 and change what I'm looking like. Well, others go bang bang bang. How did he guess it? That's exactly what we do. We go out that way, come down this way, meet them at 5, but we've already made the last plan. We've already made the last seed, you know. Then we give the first bang, and then bang, they're on the routine already. We just have to come in every now and then. Yeah. Well, they walk up the same line still, but they act at the end, you know. Yeah. And then others go, he's gone before his granddad's granddad and after his granddad's granddad. Then he never really was here. He takes the whole thing out, then comes back every now half noon. Yeah, mate, yeah. And then I'm going, all right, that's not really that big of a discovery. But what sees within myself that it's not framed to be modelled unless it's taken to be seen. And some could say, yeah. I know I can change what I look like. Yep, I know that I can come down this way and set all that in. Yep, I know I can go fully right out and travel to the other side of the pyramids and live over that side of the world. But has anyone ever taken the whole knowledge themselves? And that's what makes it real. You know, without that apple being taken by one, then there'll be no made model of theory or discovery that can be made and mapped. And that must be the location where the man comes in at half noon and does the work to be deeded and dated, without the dewest date that anyone can make and shape. For no image has ever been maintained before the leaders have been found to be forced. But still there's no way to take any such date as arid. For I could say in my shape, it hasn't always been pretty until I could think, am I just really witty, or am I just baby stew? I think about the truth and where did go my truth. I think about my name, but Jesus Christ, it's not a flame. You see, some children are born thinking their names are matched to their age. Other children go by given their name. Then some child say, name's not a name, it's a way, mate. And that's when you think what it means. Cause my name makes me brush. Donald Trump's son, you know, already famous. You know, his grandson, already famous. But he's only got daughters, I believe. That's what I believe about every dad. He's only got daughters. Not interested in the boys. But at the same time, I think about it now, that if other names aren't just a way, then they're like not a name at all. You know, they are the way. It's like my name. My name could be quite Frank. And Frank's my first name. Frank Quiet. And everyone says, quite what? And I say, quite what is it? And they say, Frank, what is it? And I say, quiet. And they go, did you say quiet? No, I said quiet. Oh, try it. Cry it. Christ. Oh, your name's Christ. But it's not really a surname. It's quite Frank. It means not matching to any namesake, because you can't be influenced by the members of state. And if it's not real as true, then still it wouldn't be believed. Because yeah, I'm not kidding anyone. But before I leave this one here today in the Science and Technology Department on YouTube, I'll still say it should have been a capital U, because the G will take the verse at the end. But they still idle their forms. What would you say, Big G? Good there, Cedar. Straight up, son. Straight up, son. You got that lockdown, idle. You got that lockdown, my son. You got that right, son. We're just putting a little brick on top of the pyramids, mate. Yes, mate. And then we're going to come around and do it again in half a day. That's right, mate. That's right, mate. We'll be back in the afternoon tomorrow, mate. That's right, son. Anyway, my name's not really Hobby Hobbs. I think it's here, Jesus Christ. But no one ever told me my name. They didn't. There wasn't any father around. There wasn't, unless it was that flower. Anyway, we're just a half day crew. Thanks for tuning in today. Peace out.